Marcus Williams pressed his weathered hands against the cold window of the executive floor, watching his breath fog the glass as he gazed down at the city lights 40 stories below. In just 3 hours, his daughter Emma would wake up expecting pancakes for her 8th birthday, and he'd have to tell her that Daddy lost his job again. The weight of that conversation sat heavier on his chest than the industrial vacuum he'd been pushing through these pristine hallways for the past 2 years. He'd thought this job at Hartwell Industries would be different. The pay was decent. The night shift meant he could be home when Emma got back from school. And for once, he'd felt a glimmer of stability in their chaotic world. But now, clutching the termination letter in his trembling hand, that stability crumbled like everything else in his life since Sarah died. Marcus had been cleaning the CEO's office when he found it, a small USB drive that had fallen behind the mahogany desk, barely visible in the shadow cast by the massive filing cabinet. Any other janitor might have simply turned it into security or dropped it on the desk, but Marcus had learned long ago that the powerful rarely appreciated interruptions, even helpful ones. He'd planned to leave it with the CEO's assistant in the morning. That was his mistake. 20 minutes later, Security Chief Reynolds had burst through the office doors with 2 guards, their faces grim with accusation. "Step away from the desk, Williams," Reynolds had barked, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "Hands where I can see them." The confusion had been overwhelming. Marcus tried to explain about the fallen drive, how he'd simply picked it up to return it. But Reynolds wasn't interested in explanations. The security footage, he claimed, showed Marcus tampering with company property and accessing unauthorized materials. Within an hour, Marcus found himself escorted from the building like a common criminal, his janitorial supplies confiscated, his dignity stripped away in front of coworkers who avoided his desperate, pleading eyes. Now, standing in the empty lobby at 3 a.m. with nowhere else to go, Marcus felt the familiar sting of tears he couldn't afford to shed. Emma was all he had left in this world, and she deserved so much better than a father who couldn't keep a job, who couldn't provide the stability she needed, who couldn't even afford the birthday party she'd been talking about for months. The USB drive felt heavy in his pocket. He could have thrown it away, let it become someone else's problem, but something nagged at him. Maybe it was the way Reynolds had reacted, too quickly, too aggressively. Maybe it was the fear he'd glimpsed in the security chief's eyes beneath all that bluster. Or maybe it was just the stubborn streak Sarah used to tease him about, the same trait that had kept him working 3 jobs after her cancer diagnosis, fighting insurance companies, and refusing to give up even when the doctors had. Marcus pulled out his ancient laptop at the 24-hour diner where he'd taken refuge, ordering coffee he couldn't afford while Emma slept peacefully at his sister's house. The drive contained dozens of files, financial records, email chains, and what appeared to be evidence of a massive embezzlement scheme. But it wasn't just any scheme. The stolen money was coming directly from the company's employee pension fund and charitable donations meant for children's hospitals. CEO Jonathan Hartwell wasn't just any executive. Marcus had read about him in the local paper, the billionaire philanthropist who'd pledged to donate half his fortune to children's medical research. The man whose foundation had reportedly funded groundbreaking treatments for pediatric cancer. Emma's own hospital bills had been partially covered by Hartwell Foundation grants, a fact that had made Marcus feel oddly proud to work in the man's building. But the files told a different story. They revealed that Security Chief Reynolds had been systematically draining the foundation's accounts for over a year, creating fake vendor contracts and phantom expenses while the real donations never reached their intended recipients. Children were dying while Reynolds built himself a private empire of luxury cars, vacation homes, and offshore accounts. The most damning evidence was a recorded phone conversation between Reynolds and an unknown accomplice, discussing how they planned to frame the next expendable employee who got too close to their operation. Marcus realized with sick certainty that he'd been that expendable employee, set up to take the fall for Reynolds' crimes. For a moment, the temptation was overwhelming. He could take these files to the media, expose Reynolds, and watch the man who'd destroyed his life face justice. The vindication would be sweet, the revenge satisfying. But as Marcus stared at the financial records showing millions of dollars stolen from dying children, he knew revenge wasn't enough. Jonathan Hartwell needed to know what was happening in his own company, but reaching him seemed impossible. The CEO was scheduled to speak at a major medical conference the next morning, announcing a new partnership with children's hospitals across the country. If Reynolds' scheme continued, that partnership would be built on a foundation of theft and broken promises. Marcus spent the rest of the night crafting a detailed report, organizing the evidence, and preparing a presentation that laid out Reynolds' crimes in stark, undeniable terms. He couldn't email it. Reynolds controlled company, security, and likely monitored communications. He couldn't call. Who would believe a disgraced janitor with wild accusations against a trusted security chief? The medical conference was his only chance. At dawn, Marcus drove across town to the Grand Harbor Hotel. Emma's birthday money spent on gas and parking. The conference was invite only, crawling with security. But Marcus had learned every service entrance and staff quarter during his years in custodial work. He slipped through the kitchen delivery door, grabbed an abandoned catering uniform from a laundry cart, and made his way toward the main ballroom where Hartwell would be speaking. The irony wasn't lost on him. Once again, he was the invisible man in a service uniform, moving through spaces where he wasn't supposed to exist, carrying out a mission that could change everything or destroy him completely. Hartwell took the stage to thunderous applause, his silver hair gleaming under the lights as he spoke passionately about his commitment to children's health care. "Every dollar donated through our foundation represents hope," he declared, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "Hope for families facing the unthinkable. Hope for children who deserve every chance at life." Marcus felt physically ill listening to those words, knowing they were built on lies and theft. When Hartwell finished his presentation and stepped down for a brief intermission, Marcus made his move. "Mr. Hartwell," he called out, intercepting the CEO near the side. "Exit, sir. I need just 2 minutes of your time. It's about your foundation." Hartwell's security detail immediately moved to intervene, but something in Marcus's desperate sincerity made the CEO pause. "You have 1 minute," Hartwell said curtly. Checking his watch, Marcus handed him the USB drive and the printed summary he'd prepared. "Your security chief is stealing from the Children's Foundation. Everything's on that drive: financial records, recorded conversations, evidence of fraud going back over a year. I found it by accident, got fired for it, but these kids deserve better." Hartwell's expression shifted from annoyance to skepticism to dawning horror as he scanned the summary. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "Nobody important," Marcus replied, his voice cracking. "Just a janitor who couldn't stay quiet while children suffer." The CEO studied Marcus's face for a long moment, perhaps seeing past the uniform to the man beneath, a father who understood the desperate love that drives someone to fight for children they've never met. "Wait here," Hartwell instructed, then disappeared with his security team and the evidence. 2 hours later, Reynolds was arrested in his office by federal agents. The investigation that followed uncovered a conspiracy spanning multiple companies and charities, with Reynolds at the center of a web of fraud that had stolen over $50 million from various charitable organizations. The money was recovered and properly distributed, funding treatments that saved hundreds of children's lives. But for Marcus, the real miracle came 3 days later when Jonathan Hartwell appeared at his apartment door, not with lawyers or press releases, but with a simple job offer and a profound apology. "I failed those children by not seeing what was happening under my own roof," Hartwell said, his usual corporate confidence replaced by genuine humility. "But you didn't fail them. You risked everything to protect people you'd never met, and I want to make sure that kind of integrity has a place in my company." Marcus was offered not just his custodial job back, but a position as director of foundation oversight, with a salary that would finally give Emma the stability she deserved. More importantly, Hartwell established new transparency protocols and whistleblower protections to ensure that employees at every level could speak up without fear of retaliation. On Emma's birthday, celebrated a week late but with more joy than any party could have provided, she asked her father why he looked so different, so peaceful. Marcus knelt down to her level, seeing Sarah's eyes looking back at him, and realized he finally had an answer that would make his late wife proud. "Sometimes," he told his daughter, "doing the right thing feels impossible and scary, but it's the only thing that lets you sleep at night. And sometimes, when